Welcome to Secrets of the Job Hunt. This is the podcast edition. I'm your host, Chris Russell. Today we'll be talking about how to score your dream gig. Joining me for the second time on this podcast is Alexandra Levit. She's an author and 20-something career expert. She has a new book coming out titled How'd You Score That Gig? A Guide to the Coolest Careers and How to Get Them. Welcome back, Alexandra.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you so much for having me.
Very good. So tell us, why did you decide to write this book, and how did it come about?
Well, I decided to write the book as a result of several conversations I overheard at friends' dinner parties. It seemed that someone at every event had a job that totally intrigued the rest of the group, and people were captivated by this person, always curious to know how exactly you got that job and what it entailed. So that's where the idea came about, and then the next step was to find out what people considered dream jobs to be, because I didn't just want my readers to have to take my word for it. It's a very subjective thing. So I went out and I asked 520 and 30-somethings what they thought their dream jobs were. If they could have any career in the world, what would it be? And that was how I came up with my list of 60 cool jobs.
Wow, okay, interesting. So what are some of your best tips for people trying to get their dream job? What can you tell us about that?
Well, in finding a career that fulfills you personally and professionally requires exploration and some trial and error. Throughout this process, it's important to have realistic expectations of dream jobs, too. Although the individuals profiled in my book, and there's about 120 of them, although they love their jobs, even they don't think there's a such thing as a perfect work situation.
Right.
For example, when I would talk to a B&B innkeeper, they would say, my dream was to own a B&B, but it's an incredible amount of work. You have to deal with, impatient guests, and it's a lot of money up front. Often takes a while to make back the money that you had to put out of your savings. So every job has its ups and downs and aspects that we'll love about it and aspects that we don't love. And this is actually a hard but necessary lesson I had to learn when I succeeded in my dream job of becoming an author.
Mm-hmm.
There are definite pros and cons to it, such as the fact that I just had a baby but also have a book coming out at the same time, and so there's no such thing for me as maternity leave. But at the same time, I wouldn't trade it for the wonderful career that I now have.
Very good. So how did you, how many jobs were in the actual book, and how did you come to choose those jobs?
Well, as I mentioned, there was a survey that I did online via SurveyMonkey,
mm-hmm.
and I enticed people to fill it out by offering a $50 Amazon gift card. I said, if you fill out the survey, I will give one lucky person an Amazon gift card, and that's how I got 500 people to respond. And based on the responses, I generated that list of the top 60 careers. And then I went a step further, actually. I constructed a comprehensive profile of each job using the information I gathered, both from written sources and in-depth interviews with about 120 people who currently hold those jobs. And then I researched personality type measures to develop what I call passion profiles. So these are 7 person categories, and they're known as adventurer, creator, data head, entrepreneur, investigator, networker, and nurturer. And then I placed the 60 cool jobs into those categories. So in the first chapter of the book, you take a quiz to help determine which passion profile best suits you, and then the corresponding jobs that fall into that profile. So readers can go to a certain section right away, and, for example, if they're an entrepreneur, and learn about 9 entrepreneurial jobs that they might want to check out right away.
Okay, so you're giving that chance to sort of assess themselves first. And okay, good. Okay. And by the way, is the job of podcaster in the book?
That's one that's come out. The book was written in late 2006, and podcaster is blogger is in there.
Oh, good.
But podcasts weren't quite as popular as they have been in the last several months. So in the second edition of the book, I think I'm going to have to include that.
Yes, you can interview me for that.
I certainly will.
Okay, good. So you surveyed a lot of those people when I'm sure you came across hundreds of different jobs. What are some of the jobs that you'd like to do personally?
The job that I would like to do personally is futurist.
Futurist, what's that?
Actually, I came across this job for the first time in 1988 when I was 12 years old, and I was doing a short story on climate change. And I was doing some research at the library and came across the World Future Society, which happened to be located about 15 minutes from where I was growing up in suburban Maryland. And my dad took me down there one day, and we kind of talked to some of the people there and learned about the predictions that were being made regarding global warming. And then it's funny because that was 1988, and if you look at some of the predictions that they were making then and that I researched for my story, some of them did come to fruition. And so I just think it's fascinating. And what the futurist career really is, it's a consulting career where you are a staff member at a firm that is employed by corporations to make predictions regarding, where the economy is going to be, sociological things that are going to be happening in the next, it can be 20, 30 years, and then publishing those predictions.
Any other kind of obscure jobs you came across in the survey?
Doula was one of the more obscure ones. It's somebody who assists mothers with childbirth. So there are two kinds. There's actually the labor doula, which is someone who kind of goes in and acts as your advocate in the hospital, or if you're doing a home birth, is sort of by your side, giving you coaching as you're delivering the baby. And there's a postpartum doula, which is someone who comes to the mom's house and helps her care for the baby and teaches her what to do and sort of gives her emotional support during a time when a lot of women, have a tough go.
Right.
A hard adjustment. That was kind of one of the more obscure ones. And actually, the most surprising one to me was elementary school teacher.
Oh, really?
That was in the top 25, and I was really surprised that many people consider that to be, a quote-unquote cool job, because you don't typically associate teacher with that. But it's actually coming around again, and people are thinking that this is something that's really personally meaningful to them. So That was a great surprise.
Excellent. Going back to, you mentioned when you came up with the idea, you'd heard people talking about their own job, and people around the table would, kind of perk their ears up about that. Tell me, did you hear some of the stories personally? What was that conversation like? And maybe tell me about one of those jobs that they talked about and how they came to get that dream job.
I remember overhearing someone talk about being a criminologist, which is something that was, again, another one of those things that I was just totally intrigued by. A criminologist is someone who studies criminal behavior. So they work for police departments, jails often, and they're trying to put together a profile of why people commit the crimes they do.
Right.
It's sort of similar to being a psychologist, but you don't always need an advanced degree to do it, just experience. And so I remember hearing someone say they were a criminologist. And it's just something, you can say, you work at Walmart and no one really bats an eye. You can say you're a PR consultant, which is the job that I had before I became a book author, and no one really bats an eye. But if you say you're a criminologist, everybody in the room is all of a sudden like, really?
Ooh, what's that
like?
Yeah.
And I just remember the people gravitating to this guy.
Yeah.
And he must have gotten sick of talking about his job all the time, but everybody was just intrigued by it.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Exactly. Yeah, one of the things in How to Score That Gig that was really important to me was to give concrete steps, because I'd seen there are books that are on cool jobs that are out there already and have been written in the last, 5 years or so. But they generally tend to be pretty vague. Like, they give a description of what the job is, which is interesting to people. They want to know what a futurist is, what a criminologist is. But beyond that, it's kind of like, all right, well, now what do I do?
Right.
These are some of the most enticing, elusive jobs out there. How do you actually get them?
Right.
So I take in every profile step by step. I take readers through step by step to determine if they wanted to go get this job tomorrow, they need to do.
And last question for you: what do you hope that readers take away from the book after they put it down?
Well, I hope that they get the true insider's glimpse into every single one of the careers. And I wanted to provide access to people, just like you and me, who are in a position to give realistic advice about getting a job in each field. And I hope that by learning about, first of all, the personality profiles, the passion profiles that I mentioned, and the corresponding interesting jobs, that people actually start to think about possibilities. Because one thing that I hear every day when I go around to corporations, universities, conferences, people are like, look, I'd love to find meaningful work, but I have no idea even where to start, and I don't even know what cool jobs are out there. So I hope to just introduce people to possibilities, and then maybe just give them a little bit of a spark so that they have the courage to take those first steps on the journey, because career fulfillment is a process, and if you're not willing to just kind of step out on the ledge and take a risk, then it's probably not going to happen for you, and that's what I hope people will get out of the book.
Great advice. Well, we are out of time, but I want to thank Alexandra for joining me today. Thanks very much.
Chris, thank you so much for having me. I would love to visit again, and check out How to Score That Gig and at www.scorethatgig.com.
Very good. And that's going to do for this edition of Secrets of the Job Hunt. Stay tuned to secretsofthejobhunt.com for more interesting career advice podcasts and content. And as always, to contact me, send an email to info@secretsofthejobhunt.com. Thanks for listening, everyone.